Chicago has produced some of the finest blues and jazz artists in the world. This fact is well known amongst the many musicians who have spent time there. They're the purest forms of American music, and while other styles receive more attention nowadays, artists like Marcus Singletary continue to shape-shift these tried and true templates. For many, exposure to the roots of popular music has been filtered through classic rock and roll, and we asked Singletary about that synthesis and how it ultimately came to inspire him.
I began listening to the Rolling Stones when I was really young, and they were my original influence when I was a young player, young guitar player, young musician, young songwriter. I was in search of bands and artists that wrote what I considered, at least, perfect songs. And the Rolling Stones were one of those groups. Also, Steppenwolf. I thought that John Kay was a great songwriter. And also, they picked songs, because they covered a lot of songs as well. They picked songs that were really great. They were very succinct. They were very political in nature. They spoke of current events, at least at the time that they were recorded, they were current events. On guitar, Mick Taylor of the Rolling Stones. Mick Taylor, because he was very melodic. I wanted to be a melodic player. Mick Taylor certainly had that. Also, Brian May of Queen had that as well. I always thought about melody first, and I still do. And if you listen to my music, you hear a lot of melody in my guitar playing. I started out as a bass player. That was my original instrument, but I felt that you could express yourself more on guitar because, of course, guitar possesses more strings than bass. Yes, you can get a 6-string bass. Yes, you can get a 12-string bass. Just ask Tom Peterson of Cheap Trick. But I felt that guitar would allow me to express myself just a bit more than a bass would. I mean, you can play like Jack Bruce or someone like this. You can play very aggressively, kind of like John Entwistle. And I do that when I play bass. But I just found my main source of expression on guitar.
Ever since the advent of the Beatles, teenagers have strapped on guitars and dreamed of forming bands themselves in a quest to emulate their heroes. Formed by Singletary, Jupiter's Child became one of those groups, and while it led to him exploring topical issues just like the band that inspired it, it also provided a platform for a great deal of fun.
I formed the band Jupiter's Child when I was 15 years old. I recorded a demo cassette, and I labeled it Jupiter's Child, and that was the very first Jupiter's Child project that I ever undertook. Again, I was very influenced by Steppenwolf, and that's where I got the name from. And we played a lot of shows. We played at the Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip. We played at the Democratic National Convention. Those were great gigs, and those are some of my favorite memories regarding Jupiter's Child as well. One of my favorite memories regarding Jupiter's Child, there was a gig that I did that was held in a very small club in Evanston, Illinois. I attended college in Evanston, Illinois. What happened was someone set up a bunch of strobe lights, so you couldn't really see anything. So it was totally dark in there, and all you could see were these piercing strobe lights, and they were right there in my face. So I'm trying to lead the band, and what's going on is that one of the other band members was inviting a bunch of different musicians up to the stage to play with us, mostly horn players. And I didn't really know most of these people. So when I was attempting to introduce the band, I was basically calling out names that weren't even on the stage. I remember I called out a sax player's name that went to the college, and the bass player was like, he's not up here. So that's really one of my favorite memories of Jupiter's Child. Also playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go, that's always a great memory. That's a great club to play at. It's a great sound system. Some great people are always in attendance there, and great groups have always been known to play there as well.
Oh, I'm a traveling man on a mission from God, yeah. Traveling man on a mission from God. And if you all ignore me, I'm gonna have to wake you guys up. One of these days you'll learn I'm on your side. Well, I'm a traveling man with lost parents, baby. Traveling man with lost parents, yeah. But when I get them back, I really teach you about shaking them on down. One of these days you'll learn I'm on your side. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's Travelin' Man by Jupiter's Child. Those who take music as seriously as Singletary has have had to make a choice. Either stay put in the place they're in, or to shift toward a more vibrant music scene. He chose Hollywood, but it wasn't a snap decision.
I always knew that I was going to move to Hollywood. It was really a no-brainer because my life had been so centered around music and entertainment for so many years that it was just natural for me to gravitate toward Los Angeles. I absolutely knew that I was going to move there when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I wasn't ever going to stay in the Midwest. I had to move to where the industry was. What was it like living in Hollywood? I had a lot of fun there. I don't live in Hollywood now. I live in the San Fernando Valley. But I had a lot of fun living in Hollywood because there are so many people there that are your age when you're young, and you can always find someone to hang out with and to have fun with. There are a lot of places that you can go and have fun at. You never are at a loss for activities when you're living in Hollywood. On any given occasion, you can just find something to do. Maybe you'll even run into a celebrity or two, and I ran into celebrities all of the time when I was there, and that was a part of the experience of living in Hollywood as well. You don't really get that when you're living in the Midwest. You know, I didn't really see celebrities walking down 123rd Street in Chicago. But I did see them walking down Hollywood Boulevard quite often, and Sunset Boulevard. There were even some at my gigs, even though I didn't invite them. So it was a very fun experience. It was a hairy experience at times as well, but once you live there for a while, you get the hang of it.
A conversation with an industry insider led to Singletary becoming a solo artist, which gave him the creative opportunities he had been seeking all along.
I became a solo artist in a very interesting way, actually. I was working at a marketing firm in Hollywood. I was working for a fellow by the name of Harold Childs, who was an A&R executive at A&M Records in the 1970s. I gave him my tape, my Jupiter's Child tape, and he asked me, where are the guys? You know, where's the band? Are the guys here? And I was telling him, well, no, they're back in Chicago. And basically, I didn't really have those same guys playing with me that were on the recordings. At that point, it really dawned on me that it would be best for me, certainly within my own best interests, to just become a solo artist, and put my name on the project and hire whoever I wanted to play with me. And that's what I did, That's why I wound up recording an album with Chet McCracken of the Doobie Brothers. He was a former drummer within the Doobie Brothers. He was on the album One Step Closer. Chet McCracken, I knew that he was going to be someone that I played with because when I would come home from grade school, I would watch the video of him playing on the 1982 Doobie Brothers farewell tour. I had a VHS cassette of that concert, and I used to watch it every single day, and I really loved his playing on it, and that's why I decided at that time that I would hire him later to play with me on an album, and it became the Smokin' album from 2011. It had songs like Get the Dance Gene, Meditate, Can It Be Real? Those songs were on that album, and he was a major part of the sound of that recording.
Telling me, can it be real? Can it be real? You usually know when you've been had, 'cause integrity can be a mask. Fascinated I am at last, 'cause the future's coming fast. What you telling me, can it be real? Can it be real? What you telling me, can it be real?
That's Can It Be Real, featuring former Doobie brother Chet McCracken on drums. Singletary's first solo album was released in 2004. 20 years later, he re-recorded the track that led it off, as Delta Blues became Delta Revisited. Why did he record a second version of the tune?
That first song on my first album was called Delta Blues. It was a harmonica and drum duet. I played both instruments, and I figured that would be a great entry into my solo career because I was very influenced by blues music and blues rock as well. It just seemed like a real natural fit for the very first song on my first album. And when I got to the Crazy Cosmic Cold-Blooded World album in 2024, it just seemed like a new beginning for me, and that's why I re-recorded the song as Delta Revisited. It was a new beginning, that entire album. It was sort of like going back to the first album. You hear some blues rock kind of re-emerging within that project. It had already re-emerged within a few projects before that, because I covered Catfish Blues by Muddy Waters, but it really came to a head here, and it was sort of like me re-recording the first album, but with the expertise that I had gained throughout the years.
From Crazy Cosmic Cold-Blooded World, that's Delta Revisited. That cut appeared 2 decades after its original counterpart, and in that time, many technological advances had taken place in the world as well as in music. We asked Singletary to talk about the impact the modern recording environment has had upon his overall approach to production.
When I first formed Jupiter's Child, I was recording on cassettes. I took one cassette and then I recorded a part on it, and then I basically took another cassette, played that first cassette back, and then I would overdub on top of it, and that's how I became an independent producer of sorts. I learned my craft from doing that, doing a lot of overdubbing. Really, most of my solo career has taken place during the digital revolution, and I've used Pro Tools mostly to record my albums. My first 2 solo albums were recorded on a different digital audio workstation. After 2006, that's when I basically used Pro Tools exclusively. As a producer, I am influenced by guys like Norman Whitfield, the classic Motown producer, Brian Wilson, someone who I've always loved. He just kept overdubbing over and over again. Sort of like Phil Spector, they both had this wall of sound that they were attempting to achieve, and they both got it, that's for sure. I also like a guy named Tom Wilson, who was the producer of Frank Zappa's early albums. He also produced Simon & Garfunkel, one of the best of his era.
Of course, different living experiences shape one's progression through life, and even for an artist as involved in music as Singletary has been, there are bound to be changes in tastes and expansions in interests.
My influences have changed over time because I've been exposed to more music over time. When I was living in Hollywood, I used to run around with a group of guys that were listening to a lot of jazz, and that's how I wound up incorporating the influences of guys like Larry Coryell into my playing, my guitar playing. We listened to a lot of Grant Green together. We listened to a lot of Eric Dolphy together. I had already been familiar with guys like Miles Davis and John Coltrane, Herbie Hancock, but I just wound up immersing myself so much more because these guys were jazz junkies, if you will. Guys like Freddie Hubbard. I hadn't really listened to too much Freddie Hubbard before that, but he wound up becoming a huge influence on me. I wound up seeing Alan Holdsworth in concert and being very influenced by him. I wound up picking up the influence of John Abercrombie, Jim Hall, and if you listen to my playing, a lot of that is certainly present within my playing. Also, I listened to a lot of, on my own, without these guys that I was just referring to, I listened to a lot of Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell was a really great guitar player, and I know he's not really well known for his guitar playing per se. He's really known for the songs that he covered, that he had hits with. But if you listen to his guitar playing, there's a real jazz sensibility within it. The jazz sensibility that you really can't wrap your head around because it's so sophisticated and it's so complicated to replicate. So if you listen to my 12th album, there's a lot of that within it. You listen to the guitar solos, it just really shows that I've been studying all of those guys. So if you listen to the guitar solos that I took on the album, such as the guitar solo that I took in Autumn Leaves, you'll definitely hear those influences. I think it really comes to the forefront on that album, more so than on any other album that I've ever done.
from Marcus Singletary's 12, That's Boppin' It Out to the Mountain. In 2025, Singletary's 12th album was released, and for most musicians, a 12th studio album represents a bit of a milestone. What are its songs about, and how does it differ from what he has done before?
Well, the songs on my 12th album stem from storytelling, mostly, in terms of the construction of them. If you listen to a song like Where Is the War, it really deals more so with psychological issues. The character within Where Is the War is trigger happy. You know, he could be a soldier or a cop. He is witnessing a peaceful sort of environment, and he's really looking for a chance to use firearms and firepower, because a lot of guys in those situations are like that. You know, they really join up with military groups and law enforcement because they want to use firepower and force. But this guy, he can't do it because he's really living in an environment of peace, so he can't really do it. There's a song called Where Is Your Soul that really deals with identity, and a lot of the songs deal with identity, mostly. There's a song called 12 in Tel Aviv that refers to a journalist who is distracted by the allure and the beauty of the Jewish women that he meets while being deployed to Israel to cover military operations there. So it has a lot to do with what's going on in the world and also people's relationships to what is going on around them. You don't get a lot of those types of stories that are presented within the jazz rock or fusion realm. I tried to merge those worlds together in order to come up with a cinematic landscape. Sometimes when I write songs, I think about cinema. You know, I think about movies. I sort of approach production as a director, you know, a movie director or a film director, someone who's trying to put together scene after scene to come up with a unified whole. It does carry its own form of commerciality. It's very accessible. Even though it's very sophisticated, it's very accessible as well. It's not like it shuts out any group of listeners. Anyone could listen to these songs and find something to appreciate and enjoy. And that's what I try to bring to the table whenever I produce an album. I don't try to shut out any group of people. I try to draw all types of people into the music, you know, and certainly the 12th album does it better than any other album that I've ever produced or created. And it doesn't really matter who appears on it. I played all the instruments on the 12th album, just like I have on many of my previous albums, and I tried to do it in a way that draws in a listener. That's really what it's all about. Creating something that others can enjoy besides yourself, you know? I mean, I enjoy the music, but I hope that others enjoy it as well.
You were within my plans from the start. Everyone thought it was them, but it was not. Don't tell anyone else what you know, or our punishment will be the snow. But us against the world, the sun and I, squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Listening hard helps in all you do. What's good for me is good for you. Because I know I can make it, you can too. We're right on the verge of something new. But us against the world, the sun and I, squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. It's our way of life. Squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Us against the world, the sun and I, squaring off against evil. It's our way of life. Us against the world, the sun and I, squaring off
is evil. It's our way of life. Yeah, it's our way of life. Our way of life. It's our way of life. Our way of life. It's our way of life. Our way of life. It's our way of life. Now, baby, won't you come on home?
Once again, from 12, that's The Sun and I. We hope you've enjoyed this brief journey into the mind of a man who has clearly created a space for himself within today's musical landscape. It's a crowded place that generally rewards those who follow trends, but Singletary has found room to breathe within it by choosing to walk down his own road while discovering a singular path.